Hello, welcome to the Red Brick Common Public Art Gallery. My name is Alexis Marie Chute. I am the art gallery curator, and we are doing a lovely little series of artist interviews. So this is a special opportunity for us to get to know four different Alberta-based artists, discover about their art practices, how do they make the work that they do, what was their journeys like to get here, and the special unifying thing that holds all of them together is they have exhibited in the past at the Red Brick Common. So we are thrilled to welcome them. Let's get started. Welcome to the Red Brick Common Public Art Gallery. We are doing artist interviews, which is super fun. I am Alexis Marie Chute. I am the curator of the gallery, and I'm also an artist. So to me, this is like the best job, getting to hang out and talk with other artists about their work. And I just want to start us off by giving a land acknowledgement. You are going to see the full acknowledgement come across the screen, which is going to thank very specifically our neighbors here in Stony Plain, where the Red Brick Common is located. We are thanking specifically our neighbors, but in general, I really love to think about reconciliation in terms of what it would feel like. And for me, I think about the most important things in my life, which are my family, making sure my children have a home where they feel safe and protected, and my culture and my ability to be creative and to make art. And when I think about those things being torn away from me, it almost makes me want to just start weeping right now. And so this is our land acknowledgements are not something we say, are not something we just say and try to throw off and get off our plates at the very beginning of our meetings. This is something that sets the tone for our gratitude, for our ability to be here, to recognize our privilege and our ability to make art and to share art, to be members of this community, to walk on this land with respect and reverence. So thank you so much to our community. And I mean that in the most broad sense. Now, I really want to thank our special guest, Ryan Wolters, who absolutely loves doing Zoom. Right, Ryan?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I met Ryan in person at the opening party for one of the exhibitions that I curated him in. And but I'm going to show you, we're going to take a step back because that wasn't the very first exhibition that I worked with you. This happened in 2022. Tell us about your experience with exhibiting at the Red Brick Common. The first time I got to meet you and get to know your work was during Project Sketchbook. How did you find out about this? What was that whole experience like?
I believe my wife Jennifer, who's also an artist, had pointed me towards that as an opportunity. I use sketchbooks pretty extensively in my practice, although I've kind of moved on to using sort of more clipboards rather than bound books. But I basically have a sketchbook or something to draw on in every room, in every bag, every jacket. I've got something I can doodle on, I guess. My practice specifically began as far as drawing in grad school. I went to grad school. I moved to Edmonton to go to grad school at the University of Alberta, but I actually entered the printmaking department because at the time I was doing a lot of collage-based art that I was looking to kind of expand on through like different digital means. But when I got there, there was a sort of minor disconnect between what they sort of were expecting as far as practice and what I was willing to do, I guess. So there's I began drawing again. I hadn't really drawn for maybe a decade, really, other than maybe here or there. And as soon as I started drawing again, it's just this deluge of stuff came out that I didn't really know was there. So it became like once I turned that switch on, it became I can't really turn it off. So it's always I draw every day to some degree. So I tend to need to have different sketchbooks around just to sort of capture that uh, spout, that graphomania that's constantly running in the background.
I'm going to go to the next picture because it's just so cool of this little kid. We had a student, like a school come and visit, and so many of the kids were drawn to your work. And as you're even just talking about having paper in your pockets and paper, everywhere you go, and you're always doodling, I feel like that reminds me so much of like childhood and I don't know, like were you like this as a kid too?
Oh, I mean, I was just thinking when you said that, I would, whenever I was at school, I would always be doodling in the margins of my pages, like especially during math, which I hated. So uh,
Me too.
I would hand in my homework, and even if it was, most often wrong, but like if it was right, it was like I would get in trouble because it would be the teacher would have to find the answer in the all the different Spider-Mans and Batmans and machine guns and things that were drawn in the corners there. But yeah, maybe that's something about that because I basically stopped drawing on a regular basis, sort of in my 20s, and so it was a big chunk of time before I started drawing again, and it just like it had just been sort of building there, I guess, oddly in the background before when I wasn't really thinking about it, and now it just I have to find an outlet for that.
Ryan's sketchbook is the one right there, which a lot of kids put on the white gloves and picked up and looked at with reverence. Okay, so you didn't make art or do sketching or drawing for a while, and then all of a sudden you get back into it, and boom, like all these crazy weird shapes come out. So here, like, walk us through like your thought process. Like, what do you just sit down and draw, or do these like amazing things come from a certain place? Do you love fantasy? I bet you love fantasy.
I like particularly, um, yeah, a lot of it comes out of graphic history, like um, French artists like Mobius, who worked on his own comics and did a lot of design for film. Like particularly worked on Alien. Um, that movie Alien was a big experience for me. So those sort of alien landscapes.
Yeah.
Also the sort of body horror. Uh, Henry and my son, have been watching the Alien movies, and he's been really, really into them. And it was just revisiting them again, seeing how much that was a big inspiration on um, the things that I'm interested in. So bodies that are transforming, bodies that are sort of becoming part of the landscape, and vice versa.
Hmm.
That's all sort of there. Um, I do not plan any drawing. I literally can't do it. I find for me it just I start. Either the drawing works out or it doesn't, or this is where my collage comes in. If I like a part of a drawing, I'll just cut it out and put it into another drawing and start it again, like I'm replanting something from one pot to another. Um,
Yeah.
so it's basically for me the real compositional stuff comes during an editing. So like I take a look at what I have and I sort of pick out areas I like. Either I mount them on boards or I collage them into other drawings, or more and more recently, um, coming into making 3D objects. So for me, a lot of it is just I just have to draw. I can't think about it too much. It just comes out, and then I go back in another stage and start looking at stuff that I want to keep working on, or finish to a different degree, or transform into something else.
Yeah.
I don't sit down and go, here's 8 by 12, and this is the drawing. It's going to be very often. I can do that, but it's like I kind of still have to start in this very sort of raw place, and it just comes out, and then I try to manage it at some other point.
So looking at your work, I can totally see. I don't think you would have a problem getting started per se. with these little gestural marks, right? These mark making. I think you probably have, this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably have like more of the, oh, am I done? Should I stop? Do you have more of that? Or are you just like, I know when to
Absolutely.
start?
That's where again that coming in and editing, that's a separate process in a lot of ways. Um, because I just go and again, like I mean, I kind of have to. It's stopping and going, okay, this is done, or also knowing like because the drawings are have stuff that is kind of areas that are open, they can bleed into other drawings. So I'm not super concerned with being like, okay, now this is every single drawing is compositionally finalized because I know that in some place in the future it's going to either become something else, or and I'm going to find where those edges either stop or where those edges grow into something else. So I'm not
Cool.
really worried about that, and maybe that's a little bit of a shortcoming, but like I that's one of those things where you kind of have to use maybe some of your flaws or some of the things that are idiosyncratic about what you do and try to find a way to make them work. I tend to get a little bored with things that are very compositionally solved. Um, I want something to kind of grow outside of that border a little bit, and that's where
Mhm.
sort of more of my more recent work has been, where I don't have to worry about a frame so much, um, because either they're objects that will exist in space or they're drawings that will communicate with other drawings. It can be, there's never a final form of how those are going to be. They can fit into, hopefully I'm trying to make my work so that it fits into variable environments.
Yeah, I
So
love that. So it's like, it's not just each one is its own, but it's in relation to the other ones. It becomes greater than the sum of the pieces almost.
yeah, and that's why I've been calling my work under sort of one sort of basic heading, because I don't, you know, I again, maybe this is a little bit of a downfall, but I don't see them as vastly different. I see them all being interconnected to some degree. Whereas prior, my collage work was tended to be more subject based. So it was like working with a certain kind of images, and they would be kind of under an idea, and I would come up with titles. And now I'm less interested in titles because I just find this is all process of voiding all these drawings, all these things, and so
Yeah.
um, they just kind of they might sort of splinter off into different iterations, but they all kind of come from the same generative place. That makes
Well,
sense.
I think are hard. Titles are hard for probably like most artists and writers. I think titles are it's challenging, right? But I can totally see what you're saying because in some ways these remind me of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's like Stranger Things or where there's like a hive mind. so they're so
Sure.
they're all connected. Do you know what I mean?
I was
You
very
hurt one
annoyed by
part to
Stranger Things. I'm like, when I saw the Upside Down when we watched the first season, I was like, geez, I've been working on this for a while, and now it's on a TV show. So that's good, I guess. But these things kind of exist in the zeitgeist, and I guess that's good.
but also it's a
um,
really popular TV show. I'm sure if you made like a graphic novel or something, like I'll be the first in line to buy it, I have to say, because your work is so cool. And it's almost, yeah, it's like biology, alien, and then it speaks to, at least for me, and I'm sure like my kids would agree, like the childlike nature of drawing. So you have all these different sort of like entry gateway points for people to like love and appreciate your work. Okay, so these images we've now seen, those were a part of Project Sketchbook back in 2022. So you probably made them like pre that. The next time, and this is where I actually got to meet you, was an exhibition in 2023, which was called Altered Reality. And it was all about more interesting kinds of sculpture. So we had like augmented reality, wire sculpture, more traditional sculpture, and your work, which sort of bridges that gap. But oh yeah, I wanted to show you. This is the surprise. This is the surprise for you. You did not want your picture taken, and here, like just this way, I've got you and your mom, right? That's your
Oh
mom.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then we've got your wife, and we've got you like in the gallery. So I just made this little collage just for you, just for
Oh,
fun.
thank you
And
so
also,
much.
yeah, and also to show like, look at how your work has definitely like taken over. So you have so many cool little pieces. You've got circular work, you have ones that are like organic shaped, like very much alien, kind of like inspired to me at least. And so I remember your artist talk at this exhibition very vividly. I think you called your work something like herpes or something.
Yes,
What did you say?
I
What
said
did you
it's
say?
like, I said, well, I mean, maybe I had a glass of wine or two, so I was like, oh, my art is everywhere, like herpes. Um,
Yeah.
and I apologize.
No,
Um,
don't apologize. I think that was like probably a
I
very fitting analogy, but also like I really loved how this exhibition, it had so many different pieces from different people, and yet yours was like sort of like the little um element that like brought it all together, unifying everything on every surface. Tell us about like this exhibition, and does this represent sort of like your new trajectory of having things? I'll go to the next one too. So it's like we've got pieces that you can't see in this picture, but transcend like flat, two-dimensional, and these works sort of leap off the wall with dimension. Talk about this, Ryan.
um, I think one little sort of thing I'm recalling too is that when I packed up the box to drop off at the gallery, and I think I just ended up including a great deal of work, and you had said to me, well, I don't think I'm going to need all this, and I'm like, well, just use what you want, whatever. And then I think it all got used, and it just all kind of exploded like a jack in the box. But yeah,
Yeah, I literally
that's
did use it all. I did literally use every single piece, and that's because they are so cool. All right,
well,
you go
and that
now.
and again, that's what, like, one of the things that I'm really working on now is I want the work to be able to sort of fill different environments. So they're it's not just like 12 framed pictures that you put in an appropriate space that would house 12 framed pictures, that they can sort of cluster, move around, they can move around other things, they can just sort of exist in a non-traditional sort of installation. um, One thing I'm noticing now as I'm looking at this is that a couple of these drawings that are, sorry, objects, void forms, have actually become new work. Like, they've grown, a couple of
Mm.
them have grown together since I got them back. So that's sort of, that makes me laugh. But yeah, that's basically what I'm speaking to when I talk about taking these raw drawings, of which I have stacks upon stacks of them. um, I basically start cutting things out of them, creating, using different materials like foam and wood, to sort of create a dimensional object. I find that interests me, that the drawings cannot have a border, that they can exist in a real space and become a little more based on physicality, which is, I think, one of the ultimate endpoints, I guess, for these is that they um, start as a two-dimensional object, that is, on a piece of 8 by 12 paper, or whatever paper it is, and it becomes something that lives in the world, um, and has sort of I think, a more of a visceral or different kind of visceral experience than looking at a drawing. So I've used,
Yeah.
like, you can see these two women here looking at, those are, one of the first ones I did was, taking a drawing and making it into a shadow box.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna see. Here's the shadow boxes.
there
Here.
you go. So I started there, and just sort of, just to, sort of as a bridging work between, a 2D and a 3D, so they can
Hmm.
kind of work as both, I think. when you're far enough away and you go, oh, there's a drawing over there. And then as you get closer, it starts to have a different vibe. And you start to notice that maybe there's real shadows happening and there's,
Yeah.
yeah. So they did that. I still love those. And I'm working on some other ones of those because as far as framed works, those ones I think work really well because they feel almost like I've worked a lot with plexiglass, and I like that it can kind of be like a medical slide or like a
Yeah.
there's something like a cross section of something that's been sliced out of something else. That's something you see a lot in science fiction and movies like that, where there's something behind plexi that's either dangerous or from a different space or a different place or an alien environment. I find that endlessly fascinating. Um,
Well, you know what this reminds me of too? That's a little bit more like PG. I'm all for the like cool sci-fi um horror kind of thing. But I also see like I have a vivid memory of it's almost like Alice what hole does she go down?
Alice in
Alice in
Wonderland, which is
Wonderland. And I think that I have like some memory of I don't know if it's like pop-up book or something that's like two-dimensional but then cut into layers of paper. So I think yours brings in like the paper is round and there's different dimensions and things. But it kind of reminds me like it has that feeling of like your ability to like look into like a different magical realm. I don't know. To me that's like one of these I think you're right. These are the square ones bridge, the time and space between like traditional and then the totally like outside of the box, which I think is what you're feeling most enjoyable, right?
yeah,
Like
definitely.
let's go back to these other ones I had previously. Like I'm sorry, the one with the depth and then the different like exterior shape is so fun. Like I don't know, as a kid, I just like this kid spirit in me loves this work.
Well,
Does your
I think
your kid love
yeah,
it?
yeah, he's like I said, we've been visiting a lot of movies that I grew up watching, and some of the ones that he's responded to the most have been Alien. And so we've watched all the Alien movies up until the most recent one. Um, and he still wants to go back to that first one. He thinks that that one's the most interesting, which I think is great. That had the design of H.R. Giger, and he took his work at that time, which was mostly um, airbrushed sort of paintings, and he translated that into a 3D environment. They basically
Mm,
used bones and foam and clay, and they created this environment that was sort of used forced perspective and different scales to have that effect. I mean, the movie's 40 years old now. So 45 years old now, 1980. Um, and
oh, you make me
it's
feel old saying that. It's like,
oh,
oh, it's so.
the thing that's great about that is like I responded to that when I was a kid. My son responds to it. It has this visceral quality, and I didn't really necessarily plan to have that. Like I wasn't necessarily trying to emulate anybody, but just like I spoke to earlier, there's all this stuff that was kind of, for lack of a better word, festering or building or just. And then when it came out, it's all these things that I didn't was not really thinking about was there, and it just kind of exploded out. I don't know if that's an answer or not.
No, that's good. Well, and even like, so just looking at these three images, like I love the ones where there's circles, but I can see looking at your work, the evolution, right? We go from sketchbook page to, you know, right angles to, you're more outside the box with the circles, and then you're right into these fun shapes. And like, look at these textures. I just want people to like really appreciate this work. And so this is one of the ones where you've lifted things up. You've kind of created openings and pass throughs. And when you started doing this, was it like, oh, like you just felt like I just unlocked like a new dimension?
Maybe again, like before I started drawing, I'd spent about a decade or more doing almost exclusively collage based artwork. Um, whether we're collaging onto plexiglass or collaging. I actually did some shadow box collages, and I became so ingrained that I don't take for granted that I can't cut something out and reuse it or put it somewhere else. That it didn't feel like it felt totally natural. Like I didn't go, oh, I'm cutting up this precious draw. It's like they're my drawings. I'll do what I want with them. And then also, I I I had a flood in my studio that basically destroyed a great deal of work,
Oh
and a
no.
lot of work was damaged. Everything was damaged to some degree almost, and I had all these drawings that I ended up saving that all had been waterlogged to some degree. And once they were at that stage, I could just if that prescription against cutting into something precious was even lessened. So
Yeah.
I took all these old drawings that were basically, a source of incredible depression and just
Huh.
said, okay, I got to do something with these. I can't just throw them away. So I just started putting them onto boards and redrawing back into them and doing washes and playing around with them just to salvage them. And I ended up that process was actually very enjoyable. Sort of salvaged that
Yeah.
time period and that work. I just try to take something that was destroyed or damaged and try to reinvigorate it. So
It's a
that's just part of what I do. You know,
that's a beautiful metaphor right there. I think like our culture, oh, like lots of people might think this tragedy happens, you've had this flood, this beautiful work, and then they would probably throw it away, right? Just like we have so many things we throw away in our culture. But the fact that you took it lost some of its preciousness, but you probably were gifted with this beautiful amount of freedom. Like you could do anything with it, right?
exactly. And so, and then eventually after the event, looking back at some of the drawings and where the ink had bled and it created different things. And there was some of those things that you create are outside of your control. And you can sort of exert some control over what you do, but there's also some things that are just outside of a rational mind's ability to totally control. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to be able to adapt to that and use it. I think that's what when I say like I don't plan my drawings, I sit down and I know something's going to happen, and whether or not it's something that I can use or not use, that just becomes me in the moment. And or even if it's something that doesn't really happen at that moment, it might be something in the future. And so that's something that I mean I used to when I was younger throw away drawings pretty regularly. Oh,
Hmm.
that's not quite up to my standard, or that looks funny, or I don't like that. That's not working for me. And now I keep everything, and even if it's not working for this moment, it might help something in the future. So I mean, I don't. I used to throw away everything, basically. Like I would keep a little small amount of what I thought was good enough, and now I keep everything because it's even if I can cut, even if I end up cutting out a little tiny piece in the future, that's a value to me. So that's
Yeah.
that collage thing, and it's just it all feels like a lot of my processes are all coming together now in a good way. They're sort of all working in tandem in a really natural way, rather than me trying to force things. It's
You're
just kind of
flowing. You're
yeah,
flowing. You're in the creative groove. That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, so you describing all that, not throwing things away, which I'm totally like that. My husband is like, we need to edit. And I'm like, I save things for decades and then I use it and then I'm like, oh my gosh, look, I saved it for all that time, right? So I'm just wondering about what your art practice looks like. Like if I was to be a fly on the wall in your studio, would I see like piles of paper? That's kind of what I imagine. Like tell me about like you say you draw every day. So do you have like the, Netflix binge like most people, or are you like always in your studio drawing? Or can you draw while you watch a show?
Yeah, I do. Like I
Tell
said,
us.
I have sketchbooks in pretty much every room. So I've got I always like I sometimes I sketch in bed before I go to sleep. Um, so I have a sketchbook up there. I have multiple sketchbooks in my studio. I have a sketchbook in the living room I can grab. Um, yeah, my studio is very fluid. I After like the flood, I decided there was some furniture that was destroyed from my studio, and so I decided that I wanted it to be not only sort of flood proof, but I could take it down and put it back up in a couple of hours. So I basically
Hmm.
went and bought a bunch of folding tables, and I can there's a couple of spots where there's a drawing desk and there's a computer desk, but I can reconfigure things really quickly. I put a couple of French cleats on the wall so I can hang different things on different size boards on the wall. I can take those down. I can so like it's very fluid. It's kind of just what I'm working on at the moment. So I can create a wall with four tables along the wall and just kind of create stations. I can so my studio will look different from day to day, basically,
Hmm.
or from week to week, depending on what I'm working on. I try to have several things going at once, whether it's like again the sketching, and then I usually have some 3D objects that are in process, and then I've also got other boards and foam that I'm cutting that and is being prepared. Um, and so there's always several things happening at the same time, and I just need that because
You need that
um,
because finish that sentence.
so I need that like some I get distracted, and I need some like if I just I want to go to my studio but I'm not necessarily feeling like doing one thing in particular. I can go, oh, I'm gonna gesso some boards. I'm gonna cut
Okay.
some foam pieces. I'm gonna There's always something to be done, even if it's not me doing really hardcore drawing, because I find that does take on my back, my I'm getting old too. So like drawing, even though it's sedentary, it does require a lot of effort. So I need
Hmm.
something. I some days it's just a matter of, oh, I'm cutting foam today, and that's very relaxing. And it's just like I've got hot foam cutters and stuff. So there's all I need to have. If I go down to my studio today and I just stack some things, I feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
I
a
just
sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, like I don't need
Well,
it.
so
I
that,
don't. Sorry, I don't need it to be like every day I go down there and like, I made the most beautiful thing in the world, but I did something,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
just how I find I get ahead.
No, but
So
I think that's what I was going to ask you. It was like the motivation and reason behind you do that, why you do have different things on the go. And because for me, and I wonder if a lot of creatives, like the ones that get stuff done, because you might be working on one project and say like you have to write something and you get like writer's block. It's like, oh, you switch over to doing something else, and then like that kind of opens up, but it's thinking in your kind of like thinking and processing in like the back of your mind. I find that like if I'm jumping between different art related activities on a certain project or body of work, I can sort of make progress, even though it seems like it's not just on one thing, it's a bit more scattered. I don't know. I relate to that. I think that's interesting.
I think of it like an ant. Like you can't. It's the job's never going to be done. You move little pieces to little pieces, and eventually you've got the colony. And
Yeah.
if you try to think about it all too much, it's the job is too big. It's too big. Just find ways to just continually be moving forward and doing
Yeah.
something, even um, that might not benefit you today, but helps tomorrow or a week from now. Um,
Yes.
because there's going to be times when your energies are low, and so if you've done some of the more mundane elements of the studio, um, and they're ready there for you when you have that moment where your energies are up and the inspiration strikes or whatever you want to call it, you're ready for that. It's there, and you don't have to start.
Hmm.
I know, like a lot of artists that I've talked to, there's always that feeling like you're sometimes starting over again. Like if you take a break for a couple of weeks and you go back to your studio, it's like, oh, do I even know how to do what I was doing? And so I find if I've always got a continuum, it shows that I know what I'm doing. It just supports me to do
Hmm.
that. Um,
Yeah. Well,
I
there's a famous writer who does exactly, and I can't remember who this writer is. I'm terrible with names, but does exactly what you are just saying, but in writing. So every time, I believe it was a gentleman, every time he finished writing, he would leave off, like have a sentence that he didn't finish the sentence, or he didn't finish the thought. And so then when he sat down next, he would read and be like, okay, like this is, oh, I could pick up more easily, right?
was
Now I
thinking
remember.
about what you were saying about like again, it's just like leaving something open so you have something to come back to. And like
Hmm.
that could be a little bit of a flaw sometimes where you feel like nothing's ever done. But I just try to turn that into something that works, you know?
Well,
Um,
I think we don't always have to define things as like a benefit or a flaw, right? We can just let it be what it is.
yeah, exactly. Just try to make the most of it, and just
Yeah.
that's it just came with the drawing. It's just part and parcel of that. It just all these things kind of exist on sort of multiple levels and they all like kind of influence as above so below kind of thing. um
Hmm.
if that makes
So
sense.
I have insider knowledge and I'm curious. My insider knowledge is that you were also married to an artist who is one of my friends. Haven't seen her in a while, but you guys are both so creative. Like, how is it that like I'm married to a non-artist, but two artists being married? Like, do you guys butt heads? Is it like you work in the same workspace? Like, how is it like with two artists living in the same house and you have an artistic kid? I've met your son. He's lovely. How does that work? Is it all like, oh, let's all sit down and make art together?
Oh dear
Let us
God.
peer into your life.
I'm you know I can this is maybe a complex question. You know Having somebody who understands what what an artist goes through, um having somebody who has skill and talent that I can trust to um give me feedback
Mm,
is great. It's a great resource to have. Unfortunately, the downside of that being is that the um, what's the saying? It's like the an organism's greatest enemy is its own organism because they're fighting for
okay.
resources. So like not to be so like super extreme like that, but sometimes we have to balance who gets studio time, and we have separate studios because we have very different working processes. I tend to like very quiet.
Mm,
Jen could be uh, painting something on a ship that was going down. I tend to like very solitary. So there's some differences, but I think the benefits totally outweigh the sort of the downsides. Um,
challenges, yeah.
Having somebody that doesn't do what you do. I can see that being great, like as a relief. You walk away and you don't have to think about it. But Jen and I, we are often talking about art. We're talking about things we're interested in. We're talking about, oh, did you apply for that? Oh, can you help me do this? I'm trying to get this thing on a deadline. So it's like a resource, and it's generally good. I mean, it's who we are, and we
Yeah.
have different aesthetics, but we can share interest in film and music and things like that, that we can look at and talk about. I think on maybe another level, it means a lot. It's very meaningful, that communication. Um,
Yeah. That's so cool. I think that's enviable. I love that. Have you guys ever shown your work together?
no, we haven't. It's it's a matter of temperament because I like my studio being very quiet. I like to um, I'm fairly I like to be fairly contemplative. I just we just have a different temperament. We're working on a draw of something that we're passing back and forth, where
Hmm.
and we're just kind of seeing how that goes. But again, I don't know, like I can't really force it. Anytime I
Right.
try to take what I do and really try to fit it into one box, I just something rebels, and so I
Okay.
kind of have to just I don't know what it is. I have to just let it happen and just see what happens. Um,
And trust your gut, it sounds like you sounds like you're very almost like physically in tune with the art that you're making. And if something doesn't feel right, you have to respond accordingly.
Definitely, and
Uh,
it's so flaky, but it's just it's just one of those things that is part of the process. And like I said, Jen can the house could be on fire and she would be finishing up a drawing or a painting, and I need a little bit of a more um, quiet environment. Um, I'm actually rearranging my like I said I'm rearranging my studio right now again because I don't know what I'm rearranging it for, but I kind of feel like I just want to create a different space and have
Is
see
it
what
kind of like,
happens.
is it like spring cleaning? Like you want to like, I find not that I do spring cleaning, but every once in a while it's like it is nice to move things around or like, oh, this junk has been sitting on the counter and you go through it and you sort it and all of a sudden you feel like this new like lease on life almost, right? Do you feel like that too? It's just like
Oh yeah,
maybe gives you a new
definitely.
perspective.
And that's and once I created my studio to be a little more modular, um, I it's just that I can do that is really beneficial. Again, like I said, I'm like rearranging my studio, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it. But the fact that I can kind of basically move stuff around very quickly is essential. I can't like things if things get too tied down and too they become stale. I really worry about things getting stale, so I just want to move stuff around and just clear a bit of the dust off and just see what happens from a different space. I think I'm going to bring one of my drawing tables upstairs into during the summer just to kind of see like what drawings happen when in this space here, which I don't really where I just mostly do like lap work. If
Yeah.
I have one of my tables can come up, it's a everything's really modular, so I just love that I can just move things around and either just because I'm making
Flexible.
work that needs it to be moved or just like just I'm tired of this. I want to just shift this all around. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay. So what changed in your environment in order to create like this one up there that's red? Because I haven't seen much red from you. So
yeah.
I'm
I
wondering,
don't
like, maybe something changed in your environment.
color is one of the banes of my existence because I don't I tend to I like black and white. So I try to bring some like I'm like, okay, I can't just have everything be black and white. I need to bring something, whether it's like monochromatic or something going on. So just again, this was a damaged work. It was one of the works that was damaged in the flood,
Oh,
and I just what does it hurt? Even though my stomach hurts when I'm putting this color that I never use down, might as well. I mean, maybe that's why my stomach's hurting, or maybe it's vice versa. So, I mean, I definitely do sort of come back to a very monochromatic sort of system of drawing and washes that I think look hopefully work. But
well, what do you think about this red one now? Like, it made
I
your stomach hurt at the time, but
it's
now when you look
yeah,
at
my
it,
stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. It is,
really?
I I I I can. It looks okay on a screen right now, but yeah, I have to pull it out and look at it again and see like, if I like it still. I could always do a wash over it. I'm always like, I can always just do another wash. Um,
Okay.
I often sometimes when I'm doing washes, it might even go too far sometimes, and I've got to pull stuff back. I'm not really precious about that. I just like for me, it's like I'm not like, oh, I have to maintain the purity of every drawing. It's like it can be what it's gonna. Like, it might not even look much like the original drawing that was on that board at the beginning, at the end
Hmm.
rather. Again, it's like that. Things are never done. I can like, if 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 I think, oh, this is done, and I look at it in another year and go, I'm going to fix that. I don't like that. maybe that's not good, but I just it's that's why I call the work void, and it's always happening in this space that is not traditional for me. Like I don't want to put
Yeah.
something under glass and then say bye bye. You know, I just like
Well,
I
and
want to. It's mine. I can do what I want with it. So
exactly, exactly. And this is where I'm hearing you say like, "Oh, it's not good." You have a. It sounds like you're always like a little bit worried about judgment or like, "Oh, is this good or bad?" And like I just see your work being um so intimately relate like connected to who you are, your body, mind, and spirit, and whatever way you're deciding to express that is obviously the right way. Do you know what I mean? And I think you don't have to worry about good,
yeah,
bad, or
it's
in
such a
between.
physical act, and it. I don't like being all flaky like this, but it like a lot of the drawings came out like when I first started. It it came out of a lot of the worry about my body and about my health, and it's just
Mm,
it's a little bit tied to that. It's again, like all that stuff I talked about earlier with it, kind of being bottled up and exploding out, and then it's sort of came up during a time when there were some physical things happening in my life, and they're it's all just connected in that way, and it's I can't really separate it. So there's always like a level of physicality to sort of like you know uh, not like a heart on your sleeve kind of way, but literally maybe sometimes a heart on your sleeve kind of way.
hmm.
um so there's something about it's like bearing your guts, right? Like putting it out there.
Yeah.
There is something about that in the work that is just always going to be there, I think, because it's just the subject matter, the way it looks, the way it feels. It has that. It's just a physical, messy physical thing, and I try to like pull something I for lack of a better term, something a little bit beautiful out of something that can be maybe a little bit gross and a little bit abject, fear based, physical
Yeah.
kind of like other place.
So do you feel like, and I hate this question, I don't know why this question bothers me, but I'm gonna ask it to you. Do you feel like in some ways this work is like healing or therapeutic for you? Like it's better out than in some ways?
Absolutely. I used to really shy away from. I know, like, it's not. I don't think of my work as art therapy. If somebody enjoys art therapy, that's great. It's not really, but like there is a little bit of that there. I can't deny it, and I never really meant for that to be what was like a major factor in my process, but it's there, and taking a lot of those worries and a lot of the messiness and a lot of the fear and sort of terror of being a corporeal being, and
Yeah.
trying to like take the negative elements of that and transform it into something that gives me a little bit of peace, that can become something I can externalize something and put it in its place and let it sort of like, I mean, or maybe I'm taking all my worries and just putting them out in the universe for other people to deal with. Maybe I'm just like infecting the world with my horrible feelings about being a person. So either way, I'm happy with both.
Well, do you know what? I saw a really beautiful graphic today. Um, there was two characters on a bus. One was like sad, and the speech bubble above its head said, um, nothing matters. And it was like, ugh, nothing in life matters. And it was like, oh, this sad little character. And then this other character in the bus was like happy. It was like spewing rainbows. And it had its little thought or talk bubble. And it also said nothing matters. And it was all a matter of perspective. They were saying the same thing, but it was kind of like two different vantage points out this bus window. And I feel like that like what you might see as like infecting with something negative, I kind of look at this as like, maybe you're spreading this, beautiful kind of quirky atmospheric idea of like the fragility and yet connectedness of all humanity, and maybe we're the aliens. I don't know. Like I think we could look at it in both ways.
Absolutely. It just, yeah, I get that. And it's just, it's like that's why when I was working on this during my grad school period, and I was struggling again for a title for a process that I just kind of become reacquainted with, and then I
Yeah.
realized it was like, oh, it's like I just started getting attached to the word void, and I just thought like, here's a word that can mean multiple things as far as
Mhm.
like a sort of alien dead space where maybe something like the abyss gazes also kind of connotation, and then also just the act of drawing just as voiding the body, voiding all this stuff out,
Yeah.
and it's like like you said, better out than in, and I think that's there. It was just there when it started. It's like a metaphysical explanation for the physical act of avoiding all this negative stuff out into the world, and I try to give it something else. I don't want to say like, oh, if you look at this you'll feel better about having brain
Yeah.
cancer. I'm it's not like that. I think that the aesthetics are also very important to me, even though um I
Hmm.
I, I don't always necessarily have all total compositional control. I have to, like, again, do that through editing. Um, but that's just part of the process.
Well, and I think that there's like we live in a culture of selfies and self-improvement and you know, plastic surgery, and everyone's trying to, like, not everyone, but like many in our culture, it's like we have a push towards like this ideal state of beauty. But I think of like many of the most beautiful things in my life have been the messiest, the darkest times, you know, think of childbirth. That's messy, right? That's blood and guts and gore right there. And yet something like that's maybe very alien of us. We're talking about alien. Something has come, bursting out, and yet it's also one of the most beautiful experiences of the human journey. So, and also talking about, I love this discussion about language, like thinking about the word void. I think our lives are often so busy and jam packed, our culture, society. It's like do things, do things, do things, and there's no space for void. So I think that like you creating a void uh in which to like un unfurl all the things that you're worrying about, and let those come out on the outside. But even like a vacation is a kind of like, let's carve a void out, a bit of time and space for rest, And I think that like when I look at your work, it almost like creates a void in me and in my imagination where I'm like, oh, I just want to spend some time like getting lost in these spaces, these dimensional, even the ones that are 2D, they're very dimensional spaces. So it's like, in boredom, we can find our creativity. In the void, we can discover new things, which is something I really love about your work. I want to hear final thoughts, and maybe too, because you've been doing this a little while longer than maybe some of the people who are watching this. I'm wondering if you have any advice or, life lessons in your like decades of time since, you were watching uh the Alien movies. Like, what have you learned? If you could say that and summarize into the void of our imaginations, that would be awesome.
I'm struggling with this because it brings up a lot of negative ideas I have about the art world. Um,
What are your ideas, negative ideas? Let's talk about that. That sounds like fun.
uh, I I I doubt I have doubt about the value of an arts education, even though I have a master's and I did go through that whole process. And there were times when it was very good for me and very interesting. And there was a lot of times where I found it incredibly stifling and almost, I mean, not even almost, but just straight up repulsive. There's a lot of, for lack of a better term, bad faith ideas floating around some of these institutions. And I wonder if what my practice would look like if I didn't go to those spaces, and
Mm,
what would have happened. And I think a lot of it would have eventually, I'll never know, obviously, but I think a lot of it was there anyway. And a lot of this stuff that's coming out was there before I went. And like I said, I was doing this different kinds of work um, for most of the time that I was in post-secondary arts education. I was focusing on different kinds of work that were nowhere like what I'm doing now. And the little pieces that have stayed behind have just been stuff that was just from doing it. And nobody, like, like nobody teaches you technique anymore. It's all about oh, you just learn to have whatever, learn to use the parlance of our time, whatever that is, whatever the conceptual concerns of this moment are, graft that onto what you're doing and try to make it sound like you're this important person who knows, has it all solved. And I just,
yeah.
that false, sort of authoritative voice that comes from art, especially in artist statements, I find so, just, it just hurts me to hear it, because I know that we're adopting other people's language, we're adopting other people's conceptions of what it's like to be an artist, and it's messy, and it's never a clear line. There's never just this
Mhm.
linear thing that occurs, and I just, it's just like trying to put this cap on a human experience that just is so dismissive of actually what it really is. And so, you, no offense, you get curators, and you get art historians, and you get teachers, that instructors, and that are vested in making things look a certain way, that is, and the artists lean into talking about those things that way,
Mhm.
because that gets you opportunities, and it's just, you need to have some way to communicate. um, but it just, there's something that takes away a bit of the purity for me of making, and it's like we've kind of co-opted ourselves a little bit, I think. um this is, you can cut all this out if you want.
Oh no, I'm not going to cut
um
this out because I think as a curator and as an artist, this is such an important conversation because I have similar thoughts and ideas about education, the role of like professional arts education. And when I'm curating, I like the artist statement is like low, low, low
yeah,
on the totem pole of like what I actually look for. For me, it's the artwork first. I
that's
always
great,
look at the
because
art first.
I find that, like, when I go to a gallery, I don't read the art. I never read the artist statement. I'm so completely uninterested, because 9 out of 10 of them are basically like gobbledygook that's been cut and pasted 100 times, even probably my own. I don't know. It just, um, so I look at the work, and if I'm interested in the work aesthetically, then I'll go back to the artist statement and see if there's
Yeah.
anything there that might illuminate it, right? Like, I want to watch a movie first. You don't watch a movie and then the first time you're watching it, you watch it with a commentary, right? You watch the movie. If
Yeah.
you like it, then you listen to the commentary. I think that we
Yeah.
need to focus on that aesthetic more, rather than the narrative. And the narrative these days is often picked from a small little group of narratives. And
It definitely seems like that. I'm echoing you because it's definitely seems like that. There's a few prominent ones that's like, oh, maybe it's because they're newsworthy, or maybe it's because they're the buzzwords or
or an
whatever.
artist
But
doesn't
I
trust
yeah.
themselves to say something that's not easily identifiable, through a Oprah's book club message or whatever. Which, and so I don't have a solution, of course, because but I try to just, I'm trying to keep my artist statement as factual as possible, to talk about what I do and how I do it, and some of the elements that are interesting to me, and
Mhm.
hopefully that resonates. And I find, as I pare that down, um, I have more room to think about the art, which is to me what it all comes from. So all there for
Yeah.
that. So basically, my advice to someone who's maybe thinking about oh, I like making art, maybe I need to do it in this environment for it to have some sort of real world value. um, Maybe
Yeah.
you don't, maybe you can do it yourself. It's like once you're out of these environments, I mean, maybe you make some connections in these places and maybe you get ahead a little bit here and there, but you're going to have to do it yourself anyway. You're going to have to get up
Hmm.
every day and find a way to do it, whether or not you're a sessional instructor or whether or not you're doing this or that. You're going to have to find room for it in your life. You're going to have to, it's going to be hard. It's going to suck. You're going to have to always be doing applications. You're going to always
Hmm.
have to, it's, that'll never, like, it's the same for everybody, right? And there
Yeah.
might be some advantages and disadvantages based on your path or where you came from, but ultimately, if you can do it yourself, maybe you just do it yourself, and maybe you don't need an exterior environment to make that happen. Now that exterior environment can be great. Like, I love crits, I love having a critique, I loved I love seeing people cry and gnash their
What?
teeth and like I mean, if you've been into any crits throughout your career, like
Yes,
some
I've been the
people just
crying one. You probably
um
were like
you know
laughing at me crying all these years ago.
um no, I just it's just like you throw a bunch of people together who don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to hear. I love hearing that somebody gets something different out of my work, even if it's crazy. I just I just I love arguing a little bit, and
Okay, the truth is coming out now. The truth is coming out.
I maybe that thing about me infecting the world with my art is not so far from the reality of it all. But so anyway, like again, like I've got Jen. She can come into my studio. I can go, what do you think of this? And she can see something that I don't see. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't see that. And that, thank you. And sometimes I'm like, oh, you're such a jerk, and so no, you're not seeing the right thing, and so that never goes away. So if you can find people that can do that for you, whether that's like a group of people, maybe you don't need to go and spend all the money and give the U of A more money than they need. I don't know. They, and fall into someone else's lockstep. Maybe you can do it yourself. You're going to have to
Mm,
do it yourself anyway. No one's going to stand over your
exactly.
shoulder and go, here's how you blend this and this. It just doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. So if you're going to have to figure it out yourself, why are you paying somebody $100,000 a year to not teach you something? I don't know. This is my struggle. I think schools.
I love rants though. This is fascinating.
It's
And
always
it's funny
happened.
because you can talk about it because you've been there and you've done it, right? I think some people, it's easy to idolize the post-secondary as like, oh my gosh, this is going to be like breakthrough with contacts and I'm going to get an agent in my gallery and oh, it's going to be like, but yeah, the sad reality is, and I can speak from my own undergrad experience as well, is like they don't teach you the practicals of how to make money or do applications or be successful or writing any of these kind of artist documents. And I totally agree that and I can say as a curator, so for those people who are watching and are contemplating submitting to me, I definitely am not in favor of the floofy artist talk, the art speak. I feel like what really matters is when people speak authentically, tangibly, realistically, with um, a message and meaning that complements the method of art making. Um, and it's short and sweet is sometimes the best.
And
Yeah.
sometimes when you go into these environments, it will flatten out some of the idiosyncratic things about your practice. And then that's why you get like a lot of schools, you get, things start to look the same. Um,
Yeah.
younger people, they maybe latently, without thinking about it, start to adopt some of the aesthetic interests of people that are above them. And that can be a great way to learn, but also it can also take away some of what you are offering. And so
Exactly. Well, for
there's no right
people,
way. There's no right way. You're gonna have to negotiate some of this stuff, no matter what you do, and
exactly.
maybe just think about that. Like I, I kind of was in a rush to go to grad school. I went back to
Mm,
my undergrad. When I did my undergrad, I was a little bit older. Um, so when I was like, okay, I got to kind of catch up a bit. And I maybe would have made different decisions if I had not been in such a rush. And I just maybe you've got a little more time to figure it out, and maybe even if you take a year or two to work on your practice, and even if you make a bunch of crap, at least you got that crap out of the way because you're gonna make
yeah.
crap. You're gonna everyone makes crap to some degree, and maybe
Well,
you got to get it out of the way, pick the piece out of it that works, and throw the rest away or whatever, or don't throw it away, put it in a box like I do, and then you know there's just that's terrible. I don't know if there's any advice in here that anyone can take in any way, shape, or
no,
form.
I'm
But
hearing your advice. It's like write write authentically about your work. It's okay to make yucky stuff and have a metaphorical flood and then take it again and rework it, remake it, whatever.
yeah,
Um,
my
and that you
advice
don't
is,
necessarily need education. And also that,
or you can
formal
educate
education,
yourself. You
yeah,
know, you're always going
yeah.
to be
Well, I
doing
feel
that
like
anyway.
lifelong learning.
Yeah,
Lifelong learning. And yeah,
you know,
formal education works for some people and it doesn't work for others. And artists, you need to be perpetually learning, and you're not going to have a boss to be like, submit now, do this now. Well, maybe you have a boss named Jen, but besides that, you are definitely going to have to be self motivated, self driven, an autonomous being of art making and production, and it's got to be meaningful to you. And so that's huge. And just like your work is beautifully meaningful to you, and you've talked about how it can other people can interpret different things. That's the beauty of art and creativity and life. We all get something different out of it. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. I am so grateful to peer inside your creative practice. Thank you for sharing your work with us. Thank you for being in 2 exhibits at the Red Brick Common. Maybe the next one you and Jen should apply for a
that might
co-show.
be
We'll see.
interesting. You know, she,
Yeah,
she's got a different, she's like there's some connections there that can be made, I think, and
yeah,
again, like that comes down to that. Sometimes we both need our own. I'm handling Henry a lot of the time, so there's like we need to go to our studios to have our own space. So sometimes maybe making some room to have like just something happen there. Um, that would be interesting.
there you
We've got a
go.
couple of things.
Challenge.
Yeah, we've
Challenge
talked
to,
about it a couple of times, but
yeah.
anyway.
Something to leave you with. I'm gonna leave that little plant a little seed in your fantasy sci-fi world and see what comes of it. Well,
Maybe.
thank you so much, Ryan. So grateful for your time. And thank you
Thank
so much
you.
to everyone who's watched. Yeah, I hope you leave and you're feeling super inspired. So maybe you go make some art tonight.
I just
All right,
hope
we'll
that
see you next
my
time.
ranting wasn't terrible. So bye bye.
No, we love ranting. This will be a longer video, but whatever. I'm inspired. Thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching the artist interview today. I hope you like it. I hope you leave and you're feeling inspired. Please drop a comment below this video. Share this video with somebody who might want to be inspired along with you. And thank you so much for watching. And if you can, come visit the Red Brick Common Public Art Gallery in Stony Plain, Alberta. We would love to welcome you. Until next time, I'm Alexis Marie Chute. Take care.